Congress is expected to vote on the Inflation Reduction Act this week. Great title, we all want that. But how much would it actually reduce inflation?
And why do some people say it could really make prices go up, not down? Are their claims true? Let's dig into it.
These days, checking that bank account, you don't want to look at your balance. It is a moment of pure panic.
It can be scary, especially with inflation so high. A lot of people ride really close to zero until payday. Yep.
But what if you could get an extra $1,800 in your bank account?
Sounds pretty good. That's how much a new report says the Inflation Reduction Act in Congress could save just the average American family on energy costs. I'm Tanya Rivera.
And I'm Ben Briscoe. Even if Congress passes the bill, and that's still a big if, you won't magically get that money. There's some work you're going to have to do to get it. The group Rewiring America came up with the figure that the average American family could save $1,800 a year in energy costs under the Inflation Reduction Act. That's only if you take advantage of planned tax credits and rebates for upgrading to a more energy-efficient lifestyle. How much those tax credits and rebates are depend on how much you make. The bill includes an $8,000 rebate for a new heat pump for low-income homeowners. People who make more could deduct up to 30% of the cost for upgrading. You could also get 30% off the cost of installing solar panels on your house. And you could get a $7,500 credit for buying a new electric car, or $4,000 for a used one. In addition to saving you money, Democrats say this bill would be the single biggest climate investment in United States history.
The reviews from the inflation experts and the climate experts are all saying that this bill will have a major impact in both areas.
This bill has no support from Republicans. They say there's a major drawback in how the Democrats plan to pay for the bill. We're going to dig into that and hear from Republicans in a moment. But first, some other ways the bill could impact you. The bill gives tax credits to companies looking to develop green energy and hire more workers, which actually comes as yesterday. The governor announced a new training program right here at North Carolina A&T to help train people to work in the triad for green energy jobs. High-paying jobs, by the way.
Well, the White House says the bill would also lock in place lower health care premiums for the next 3 years, saving about $800 a year for anyone that gets coverage under the Affordable Care Act. It would also put a cap of $2,000 on prescription costs for people on Medicare. Some folks in the Democratic Party want the bill to go even further to help people not on Medicare. Hope Ford says there is work behind the scenes right now to also cap the price of common prescriptions.
Bethany Kinsey is one of a kind, but her story is one of millions.
I've had type 1 diabetes for 29 years. I was diagnosed at age 5. It's shaped a lot of my life.
Shaped her life becoming a nurse practitioner to help others with the diabetes, but also for the insurance.
Grew up knowing I had to get a job that guaranteed benefits so that I could afford my insulin.
In Georgia, 12% of the population has diabetes. Many don't have insurance, and insulin-dependent diabetics spend an average of $98 per unit of insulin. It's why people like Emory's Dr. Kenneth Thorpe want senators to add provisions lowering insulin prices into their upcoming economic bill.
If you have to pay a lot out of pocket, we know people don't fill their prescriptions, and what happens, they end up getting sick and end up in the hospital.
Some Senate Democrats hope to get a $35 cap on how much people with Medicare or private insurance pay each month for the medicine.
High gas prices, high food prices. We have a real great opportunity here to make medications not only affordable, but hopefully very close to no out-of-pocket payments.
Thorpe and Kinsley say if this happens, it could open the door for lowering the cost of other high-priced medications.
Once you set a precedent, a lot of other insurance companies can follow that precedent.
Senate Democrats are rushing to put in some kind of insulin-related policies, although the clock is ticking down as a vote on the economic bill is expected this week. Living with diabetes is a long-term game. Kinsley believes it's time for a long-term solution.
The cost of insulin impacts so much in someone who has insulin-dependent diabetes. This monthly cost, if we can reduce it, it's going to take pressure off from them.
Okay, I told you Republicans do not support this bill. They're worried about the plan to pay for it, raising the minimum corporate tax to 15%.
You look at electricity costs, you look at gasoline costs, you look at food costs. None of that is going to be addressed or dealt with by big fat tax increases on companies in this country that create jobs, because we all know that's going to get passed on.
To really consider that argument, we have to figure out how much more in taxes companies would actually pay. So, Democrats want the minimum tax to be 15% for a corporation. But wait a second, we dug into it and found the current tax rate for corporations is 21% already. The obvious question here is, how does this make sense? Well, it seems like a tax cut, not an increase, but here's the deal. Right now, corporations can just deduct stuff and find tax loopholes. So they often end up paying much less than this 21%. The 15% minimum is supposed to be 15% of their total earnings, period, with no deductions or wiggle room. Companies would pay companies who make over $1 billion would pay whichever of these two tax rates ended up being higher. Let's dig into a real-world example here. According to AmericanProgress.org, ExxonMobil made $93 billion in U.S. earnings in 2021. They paid $236 million in federal income taxes. That's about a 3% tax rate. Under the 15% minimum, they would have paid closer to $1.4 billion. Okay, but if this change happens, won't companies just move overseas to a cheaper country? Well, more than 130 countries have signed on to an agreement brokered through the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. The countries say they will all have a 15% minimum tax rate in place by 2023, but economists say there is very little way to actually enforce the deal. A grand example of that, right here in the United States. We actually signed on to this agreement, but if Congress doesn't pass the new law, we probably won't be able to make the changes we promised to other countries. Economists say that means a lot of countries might backtrack too.
Not just Republicans against the bill, two Democratic senators have been holdouts on the plan. This weekend, Joe Manchin of West Virginia said he would vote yes, saying the minimum tax plan was closing a tax loophole, not raising taxes. Arizona Democrat Kristen Sinema is still holding out, saying that she is concerned about the corporate tax minimum.
We'll be exchanging texts back and forth, and that she's always been that. She's extremely bright, she works hard, she makes a good decision based on facts, and I'm relying on that.
Bottom line, we all know inflation is still high, and we're waiting to see if the folks in Washington can actually come up with some kind of solution.
Again, a final vote is expected later this week.